In this video, we'll learn about armature reaction in alternator. So before that, previously DC machine रे भी तमे armature reaction विषय रे पढ़ी दिबो. Same similar तमरा alternator भी same thing, खाली difference कोन आडी ना alternator आउ DC machine एक difference अछि. कोन difference तमरा normally DC machine जोड़ा DC generator हेला कोन है जे तमरा main field अछि. Okay, field, inside the field you have a rotor, that is the armature. Armature ta kon hochi inside re armature rotate korchi. Armature is rotating while this field is stationary. The field is stationary field. Okay, tamar jo field achi, field is stationary, aw armature ta rotating korchi in case of DC generator. Similarly here kon hochi na tamara armature is stationary while the field is rotating. Inside you can see this is the alternator. Alternator jo achi, alternator north and south pole. So this is the field that is the rotating field while stationary armature. This armature is the stationary field. While three-phase supply is taken from this alternator. Three-phase supply, that is a load will be connected here. Here you will connect a load. This load can be a resistive load, can be a inductive load, or can be a capacitive load. So under no load, when the load is not connected, that means in armature no current is flowing. No current is flowing. But when the load is connected, armature current will flow and hence armature flux will also generate, right? Armature flux will be generated. And the field jo rotate korchi, field flux hoji, that is the main flux, field flux, that is the main flux, main flux, that is the main flux. So what is armature reaction? Armature reaction kana? Armature reaction is the term used to describe the impact of the armature, that is the starter flux. Armature is stationary, that's why it is starter. And your DC machinery is starter patla, that starter and this starter is different. This is a starter means static, not moving, while the field is rotating. So the armature reaction is the impact of the armature flux on the flux generated by the rotor field poles. Means in simple language, the effect of armature flux on main flux, that is on main field flux. So field is rotating, so there is field flux, and when the armature current flowing, that means armature flux is also produced. So the effect of armature flux on the main flux is called a armature reaction. Similar to your DC generator, same thing, but here the load is different. That is the load can be a resistive load, can be an inductive load, or can be a capacitive load. So next kon hochi na armature reaction ko factor upare depend korchi. So armature reaction depends on two factor. One is the armature current, and second one is the load power factor. So in details we will discuss about the load power factor, a different power factor, that is unity power factor, lagging power factor, and leading power factor. So here zero lagging, zero leading means here the unity power factor means the load is a purely resistive load, and zero lagging means the load is a inductive load, purely inductive load, and zero leading means the load is the pure capacitive load. एटी देखि पारियो एटा गोटे अल्टरनेटर टा, राइट. सो अल्टरनेटर जो फील्ड अच्छी फील्ड जो नॉर्थ एंड साउथ पोल क्रिएट होची मींस दैट इज द इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेट सो इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेट क्रिएट करिया पई डीसी सप्लाई उडे प्रोवाइड करिया पड़ियो एंड दैट डीसी सप्लाई इज कनेक्टेड टू द रोटर ऑफ दिस फील्ड रोटर रे तमरो डीसी सप्लाई प्रोवाइड करा ओके डीसी सप्लाई विल प्रोवाइड इन दिस रोटर एंड नॉर्मली कोन त जो शाफ्ट अछि शाफ्ट ऊपर तमरो डीसी मशीन रो स्मॉल डीसी machine this is generator exciter this is called exciter okay exciter को छेडा को सो सेडा तमरो इंस्टॉल हेता जे तमरो शाफ्ट ऊपर ही सेडा प्रोवाइड करछि सप्लाई रोटर रे तमरो पोल्स क्रिएट होछि सो इन दिस डायग्राम दिस is a two pole machine so pole can be a 2 pole 4 pole 6 pole similarly this so more is the pole less is the speed less is the pole more is the speed simple because tamara speed n equal to 120 into f by p so p देखि पाजो डिनोमिनेटर अछि डिनोमिनेटर p अछि so p जदी ग्रेटर हबो speed will be less p less hale speed will be more right okay so in details हम डिस्कशन करिवा यूनिटी पावर फैक्टर जीरो लैगिंग एंड जीरो लीडिंग पावर फैक्टर कैसे राइट सो फर्स्ट होचे जीरो सॉरी यूनिटी पावर फैक्टर यूपीएफ अंडर यूपीएफ यूनिटी पावर फैक्टर सो एट देखि पारियो डायग्राम रे इन दिस डायग्राम सॉलिड लाइन जोड़ा छी दैट इज द आर्मेचर फ्लक्स एंड द डॉटेड लाइन इज द मेन फ्लक्स okay the dotted line is the main field flux and the solid line is the armature flux so the effect of armature flux on the main flux is called the armature reaction so different power factor रे a effect जो अच्छी दा difference अच्छी different रहिबो so based on this diagram हिसाब रे हमें easily आको analysis करि परिबा the impact of armature reaction on the load power factor when the load is of unity power factor under unity power factor the armature reaction impact becomes entirely distorted means only it creates disturbance but reduce किछि हबनी armature reaction द्वारा effect किछि एते major effect किछि पड़िबो नाही only distort करियो main flux को only distort करियो means in simpler term the flux in the air gap is distorted but not weakened weak करियोनी ठीक है weak कर दोनी खाली से मेन फ्लक्स को जस्ट डिस्टॉर्ट करछ तो किन डिस्टॉर्ट करछ मैं डायग्राम में देखिए देखो here the armature flux lags the main flux by 90 degree electrical degree okay 90 degree flux तमरा armature flux अछि सेडा 90 degree lagging अछि okay 90 degree lagging this causes the flux to strengthen at the trailing pole tips and weaken at the leading pole tip. However, the average flux in the air gap remains mostly unchanged. Means देखि पारियो एडा गोटे पोल अछि नॉर्थ पोल दिस इज नॉर्थ पोल and this is the south pole. So under north pole एड देखि पारियो here this point is the and this point this 2 point okay one is the this is a leading point okay this is a leading tip this is a leading tip and this is a tailing tip tail okay tail अच्छा पछड़ा अछि tailing tip trailing okay trailing this is a trailing tip so leading tip and trailing tip देखो under this leading tip under this leading tip ए जगह देखो हमारा armature flux is positive while this field flux is negative so these are opposite to each other so this will cancel to each other means it will weak here okay ए जगह तमरो कोन करबो weak करबो this so leading tip of the pole रे कोन अछि weak हे जाउछि कोडा मेन फ्लक्स टा weak हबो obviously काइना गोटे पॉजिटिव गोटे नेगेटिव ले ओवरऑल ला कोन हबो कमी जियो बहुत but in the trailing tip, in this side, a side देखो, a side रे कौन है? Armature flux is also positive, while this field flux is also positive. So trailing tip रे एटा strength बढ़ी जाउची, while तमर leading tip रे तमर strength तमर कमी जाउची. So overally गोटे कमुची गोटे बढ़ुची. So overally देखिया वाले average ता तमर almost constant आसीबो. That is the average flux in the air gap remains mostly unchanged. That is the constant. बुझियला? So next, similarly, tamara zero lagging in power factor. When zero lagging, simply read करछि मु देखो तापर बुझे दउ तमो. When the load power factor is zero lagging, the armature reaction fully demagnetizes the flux, resulting in a weakened air gap flux. Okay, as illustrated in the figure, the main flux wave is shifted back by 90-degree electrical, opposing the armature flux directly. Consequently, the air gap flux is slightly reduced, leading to lower generated EMF. So to maintain the value of generated EMF, field excitation must be increased to offset the weakened air gap. Simple. So diagram देखो explain करछि कोन अछि तमरा. This solid line is the armature flux, and the dotted line is the main flux. Dotted line is the main flux. So देखि पारियो during this north pole side रे armature flux is positive, while तमरा flux main flux is negative. In south pole the main flux is positive and armature flux is negative. So overally in both these pole, the flux, both these flux, one is positive while another is negative. So overally तमरा completely कौन होची demagnetize हो जाउची. Flux तमर जाउची demagnetize होउची, means cancel to each other. दिले देखो positive negative होची. So overally बहुत कमी जीवो. Overally average यदि calculate करियो it will reduce. Okay, average यदि calculate करियो it will reduce. So then so जो generate होची तमरा flux armature EMF जो अछि सेटा भी तमरा कमी जीवो. बुझियला? So ताको maintain करिया पे हम कोन करिया पड़ो, field excitation increase करिया पड़ियो. DC value जो field excitation will, we have to increase that. Similarly, in case of zero leading, it is exactly opposite. In first case, under UPF, unity power factor, the load is resistive load. Load is resistive load, and under lagging power factor, the load is inductive in nature. Inductive load. While in case of leading, the load is a capacitive load. So under capacitive load, that is the leading power factor. Zero leading, zero lagging means pure capacitor, pure inductor. Okay. The armature reaction impact is entirely magnetizing, means as अगर तमर जो armature flux अच्छी main flux को helpful करियो. Okay, it will add करियो, addition करियो. As a result, the air gap flux increases. As अगर कौन हो flux will increase, the main flux overally the average flux will strengthen, increase. Okay, the wave that indicates the primary flux shifts ahead by 90-degree to assist the armature flux. This significantly boosts the air gap flux, and therefore the generated EMF is increased. Okay, therefore the generated EMF also increase. So जदि अधिक हबो ताको हम डिक्रीज करिया पड़े कोडा field excitation will must decrease to maintain the generated EMF constant. Generate करिया पय EMF टा generate करिया पय excitation जो field excitation we have to decrease it. Okay, diagram रे clear तमे देखि पारियो. Both the armature flux and the main flux are positive here, and here both these are negative. So overally it is strengthened. So this is all about the armature reaction in case of alternator. So purpose of this video is to simply to write down these theories in your semester exam. So for in details, in-depth analysis, you can follow your textbook.